Welcome to Season 2 of You and Me Kid, a podcast about starting and raising a family on your own, where I speak with other single moms, those still considering, and experts in relevant fields to give you a real sense of what the day-to-day experience of solo parenting looks and feels like. So wherever you are in the process, I hope this podcast provides some support, helpful info, and most importantly, humor. Thanks so much for listening. Now let's get to it. Okay, Krystin, we just were catching up a little bit prior to recording, and I want to really dive in more to kind of the experiences that we've both had in the single mom community. But before we do that, I just wanted to give those listening just a little bit of a background on kind of on you and how you came into the world of single parenting. With you, I'm so excited to chat because there's a lot of different categories of things I want to talk to you about. You're a single mom of two. You are an entrepreneur. You started this incredible single mom community. And that community also has this really amazing subcomponent of travel, which is a really big part, I think, of single mom, maybe fears and excitement as well. Yeah. So we have a lot to cover, but why don't we start just kind of a little bit, if you could take me back, Krystin, to how did your single mom journey begin?
Yeah, so I got pregnant at 24, and I can't say it was like a love of my life situation. You know what I mean? It was like I was young, I was having fun, everything was great. And then, you make tough decisions. You're like, hey, this is like a new relationship. It was for us. And it's like, do we want to have the baby? These are real conversations, that we're having. Do we want to have the baby? Are we ready for a baby? Should we take other routes? Ultimately decided to like give it a go. And, that relationship, it was actually great for me as I entered motherhood because we just had a ton of support, right? Yeah. And I think like us making that decision, we're going to, move forward. We're going to pursue a relationship together because that was like a 6 months in, got pregnant, kind of was just dating situation, right? We worked together. Over time, it just wasn't the right match. We were two kind of like people who had level heads and we're like, all right, like we can co-parent, it's fine, right? So that I tell people like motherhood in that regard with my first child, I didn't really understand the life-changing element of it because my life did not materially change because of how much support we had, right? Wow. So what I really consider like my introduction to motherhood, and sounds bad, maybe, I don't know. But single motherhood in particular, where I really started to feel like a single mom was that relationship had ended. We were co-parenting, all was right with the world. And I ended up getting back with my high school sweetheart thinking like, okay, this is it. We've tried dating other people. We both had other kids. Like, this is going to be perfect, right? It was not, okay? It was so bad. Not so bad. I don't want to say so bad, but it was so bad, right? And I think in that relationship, I really did think like, okay, this is done. Like, this is it. This is what I'm doing. I'm going to get married, all the things. But I think from a relationship standpoint, then I move into motherhood, I just expected that to be the person that I knew and the friendship that we maintained over the years. I didn't really look under the hood, right? I just assumed like, oh, we've known each other for years. We were high school sweethearts. Like, this is going to be a breeze. And there was just a lot of things under the hood that fundamentally, when I think about how I wanted to having a child already, right? And then at this time, we didn't have kids. I started to see those kind of red flags, ended up getting pregnant around the time I was thinking about leaving. So that was really difficult. I had antepartum depression while I was pregnant, just because of the sheer weight of everything that was on that relationship prior to getting pregnant. And then now having the hormones of just a baby was really challenging. And in that pregnancy, I really wanted to leave while pregnant, right? I wanted to leave the relationship while pregnant and I wanted to have a smooth pregnancy, and just that didn't end up happening. I left 2 months after giving birth. So that is what I feel like my introduction to single motherhood was. It was taking my 8-year-old then and a newborn into an apartment by myself, barely healed from the motherhood, the delivery and all of that experience. And that's when I was like, wow, like I'm a single mom. I have to figure out how to give my kids kind of like the life that I want them to have, not rooted in the circumstance that was really hard, in the time to manage. So that's my motherhood journey and how it entered single motherhood. And it was a big event. It's why I've kind of gone down the road of entrepreneurship, It's why I've built the communities that I've built. And so, yeah, I credit that to that, like my second child really introducing me to like the full range of motherhood, and then just this new lane. Even though I was a single mom with my son, I didn't really feel like it. So this my daughter Harper, she really, yeah, introduced me to the world of like, you need support, you need help, you need to figure out like how are you going to do this.
Yeah,
uh,
to build the
mhm,
world around you to support. Yeah. Let me
right.
ask you something. I'm going to go in on a big weighty question because I feel like you can handle it 3 minutes into a chat, Kristen. I feel like now that I've become a single parent, there are kind of these boxes that exist within the single parenting world, and I'm doing quotes for those listening, where it's like you are a single parent if you're a single parent by choice. You're a single parent if you are a widow. You are a single parent if, like, I don't know, maybe someone creates a boundary where it's like, oh, you broke up or someone left you a few
Mhm.
weeks into having a baby, right? And then there's this huge world of folks who are co-parenting, or maybe there's a person in the picture. And I feel like even within the single mom community, there's kind of this sense of, well, you're not a single mom anymore if these categories apply. Like you now have a partner or you are co-parenting with someone. And I don't like that. I feel like everyone should be able to identify however they want. And if that's single parenting, I don't like those boxes being
Right.
built. And I'm interested in kind of how you feel about all of that and the language around single parenting, especially, co-parenting with the guys in your life. Like, how do you address all of that? And how do you feel about those kind of titles?
Now that I've kind of stepped outside of myself in my own experience by way of having a community, I feel empathetic to the reasons why. I think there are legitimate reasons why those walls exist within the community, right? I think there's a very different experience from a single mom who, you know, the dad bailed and they're kind of forced in a situation versus me who we talked about it and we co-parent, and I very much so still identify as a single mom. And then there's levels of like, do you receive child support? It's so many things and like little nuances, but I stand firm in that I'm a single mom. Like, and I acknowledge my co-parents, and I acknowledge that even with me having two, they're very different. They're very different types of co-parents, right? They're very different people. So I like to, in my case, the criticism that I've gotten is like, you have co-parents, and I'm like, yeah, but those are that's a choice, right? And it's like there are things that you as a mom who doesn't have a co-parent have the freedom to do that maybe I, a mom with a co-parent, don't really have the freedom to do because of the consideration of the other parent and things like that. So my sentiment is that we're one community, right? And I think that the nuances that make our unique experiences different, and where these walls kind of, or these lines are drawn, are really helpful to the community as a whole. If you talk to a mom who co-parents and hear their individual journey, it may encourage you, if possible, to reach out and pursue a relationship that maybe, it's like so many
Mhm.
nuances where these things are powerful to use collectively as a community to educate, to inform, to support, just to say like, hey, like, I'm in the same situation and I identify with what you're going through, and the more different perspectives that you have around your experiences, the better. So
Yeah.
for me, I try to always diffuse a lot of the content that we do with CoTripper and Single Moms Travel is also in that CoTripper community. Is we talk about those things head on. You know what I mean? And I think the problem is that single moms by choice stay with single moms by choice, and co-parents stay with co-parents. And to me, that's detrimental to the community at large. And the real value of kind of like, at least what I'm trying to do is create like this ecosystem where we all work together. We all like use each other's experiences. We all can like say, hey, do you need help with this or that? And not even from a help perspective. I think from a sheer economic perspective, the value of us coming together means better things get built for single moms in general, no matter how you identify. Like products get built, investments get made into this community. And we've seen that happen with other communities and how powerful it can be. And so I think the one thing that I always encourage people to do is just like, you can own your experience, but also be empathetic to like the way you imagine somebody else's experience just because of this divider or this specific thing is not necessarily like the embodiment of their story. And they may have something valuable to exchange with you. Again, like to sum it up, I am empathetic to people who've had a different experience than I have had in single motherhood, but I also very strongly own and stand firm in the fact that I am a single mom.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I feel like too, there's the kind of this sense of that it has to be hard, like that being a single mom is hard, right? And I feel like those lines are drawn when it becomes like, well, wait, it's not as hard for you as it is for me. I have it harder because I'm alone and you have a co-parent, or I have it harder because I don't have child support coming in and you do. Like, and I actually see it totally the opposite in a lot of, instances. I have partnered people in my life who I think it's harder for them to be a parent and keep a partnership together or manage a partnership that may be really unhealthy than me and my daughter being able to make whatever decisions we want at whatever time, right? And so I'm similar to you and Chris in that I try to kind of change the story when people are like, I don't know how you do it, or gosh, well, so and so has a boyfriend and that must be easier. And I'm like, it's not. There's benefits to what I'm doing, there's benefits to what you're doing, and there's downsides to both, but everybody's struggling in some way, right? Like, let's
yeah,
not compare the struggles and prioritize them. That's just not fair.
yeah. I have a lot of married, almost all of my friends are married, you know? And I love the Institute of Marriage. I love it. I want to be married one day. I wear it as a badge of honor. It's not an identity thing. It's like just like
Yeah.
currently I am a single mom, right?
Yeah.
And I think for however long you're traveling through your journey as a single mom, there should be resources, support, and community for you, period. Just like a married mom, just like a whatever, whatever arrangement anyone else has going on, right? And I always say anybody can be your co-parent. My mom is my co-parent, even though I have co-parents. Like, who
I
do I
listened
call?
to an interview you
My
did a
mom.
while ago where the gal interviewing you was like, Alexa is my co-parent. And it made me laugh out loud. And I was like, ooh, who's my co-parent? And my daughter's obsessed with Taylor Swift. So she's two, thanks to the Disney app. She's watched the Eras tour a number of times. And I'm like, at 5:30 in the morning, like Taylor Swift is my co-parent.
She,
Like I
thank
don't
you,
have an
Taylor.
Alexa, but she's the most consistent person in our life right now. Um, so yeah, I'm totally with you. And I love that you just brought up the fact that you want a partner, because I totally get that as well, which is people think because I've like stamped the single mom box that it is the thing that I identify with the most. It is not. And that it's like where I'm going to stand forever. And I have to be open about, hey, I would love to be married. I would love to find someone who has their own kids and have a whole big, crazy, chaotic family. But I try to be as open about that as I can, because I do think people maybe don't think about me as an option for other single people, because they're like, oh, Sarah's like a single mom. That's her journey. That's her path. That's her identity. And so I have to remind them that just because I chose this doesn't mean I'm choosing it in place of partnership. I just am hopefully just flipping the order a little bit.
Yeah. And like, I feel like it is something people deem your identity, right? If you say it out loud. Now,
Yeah.
if I was like in the corner, kind of like sad about it, then it's something about saying it out loud and saying like, and not having a problem with it, because I feel like society and just like, there's a lot of bias that is connected to that title, right? I know single moms who would not say that publicly. They feel shame.
Yeah.
They feel like everything that I want to like flip that on its head, because I'm like, just like you said, like the struggle part, like it's a beautiful life. Like it really is. I don't know any mom, again, I have partnered friends, single friends who don't struggle. So I feel like that's like the baseline. That's like a,
Yeah.
we
That's
all
called being a human. Like
right,
being a
right.
human, being a parent, all of it is just like there's a baseline of it being hard, but hard looks really different for everybody, you know?
Right, right. And so like I think like not enough is talked about. Like it's empowering to make a choice to have a kid by yourself. It's a beautiful thing, right? It's
Yeah.
like I'm not waiting, because women, we have a clock. I don't, like say what you want. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to be 50 having, I mean, people do it, no shade, but I didn't want to be, you know what I mean? Like, so even
Yeah.
me being married and having kids, there's so many nuances to it. And it's like, it's nothing wrong with it. It's nothing wrong with it. It's nothing to feel bad about that you're not partnered. And I think owning that makes people uncomfortable
Yeah.
sometimes. And so that's why the narrative hasn't shifted to a more positive sentiment around single motherhood and single moms. It's just because, again, in these silos, like I feel like we're not loud enough to really put a stamp on how beautiful and in a growth process this is to choose to parent this way, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of us parenting this way, So
Yeah. I felt when I first started the podcast a little bit like I couldn't be honest about how great it was, like how happy I was, how fulfilled I was, because I feel like whether it's single moms or just parents in general, there's this idea of like, oh, you're going to be sleep deprived and you're never going to shower and you're going to be like, yogurt in your hair, crazy all the time, like no balance. And my experience has been exactly the opposite. And I felt at the beginning of maybe the podcast or even just in casual conversations that I'm not really like allowed to say how good it is because maybe that sounds a little like, I don't know, fake or like Pollyanna, like I'm, painting over what's really hard about it. But the experience has been incredible and way more joyful than I ever even imagined. And I imagined it was going to be amazing. And so um I'm so glad you said that because it's like, why is that? Like there's this society thing. It's like you got to complain about parenting and you got to complain about being a single parent and you got to complain about your partner. And
or
I'm
lack thereof.
yeah, I'm like my life is more balanced than it has ever been. I'm more joyful than I have ever been. I find just so much fulfillment out of this and in my relationship with my kiddo. And I never anticipated it being that. I just
Yeah.
assumed I was choosing chaos and I was okay with that, but I didn't.
Yeah, and similar is true with like leaving partners. Like we were not good together. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Okay, like we didn't work. Like, but that doesn't mean, and I know like there are certain things like, and I always recognize that it's not an option for some people to leave relationships amicably, or even like I wouldn't say I left my relationships amicably. You know what I mean? I would say I worked diligently and intentionally at making sure that we had a good enough foundation post separation to be able to possibly have what we have today, right? So
Yeah.
I was careful how I did
Yeah.
things, and took a lot of crap, early on, because everyone's healing, and again, like it's based on empathy. So for me, I'm like, I am so happy that they're over there, I'm over here, and we're doing this way. Like it's
Yeah.
my life would be miserable if I would have stayed, right? And
Yeah.
so it's like you could say for the vanity metrics, we're married and we're together and we're a family, but like I know in my heart of hearts that making those choices, I would have been miserable.
Yeah.
And I'm happy now. Like happy doesn't mean challenges are not like I don't want to strangle my son as a teen sometimes, like because I do quite often. But it means like, I wouldn't even be able to parent them with intention and love and true presence like I do now if I were in those relationships. And that I
Totally.
know,
Totally.
right?
You're
So
a better parent, you're a better
yeah,
human,
better
you're more
person.
authentic, Kristen, like all the things, right? That are like the baseline of how we teach our kids to become the people that they want to be. I
Yeah.
couldn't I couldn't agree with you more. As you were going through all of this, as far as I understand it in my Google research of you, you were an accountant through this whole time, right? And then at some point in having two kids solo, you decided that pursuing entrepreneurism and starting a company on your own was something that felt right to you, which again is like a big leap as a single parent and that financial security and all of that. Kind of talk me through how you made that decision and why there was a need that you really wanted to answer with your company.
Yeah. So I have a deep love for single motherhood, and I would have had that because I was raised by a single mom, even if I never became one. So it's always been something that was near and dear to me. So in 2018, I was working at a startup. I was working at a SaaS startup as an accounting manager, and in that time, the owners were really supportive of my, I guess, entrepreneurial spirit, right? Because they were like similar in age. Their company was like growing, and they allowed me to like use our new space to like host events. So what I started to do was like, while I was still employed, I was just like, let me just like tap into like, I know I want to do something geared towards women. I know single motherhood is such a big part of my identity, and I wasn't sure how to like weave it together. So I started with like a women's organization. I hosted events at my company. They let me like rent out our kitchen. One of the founders, he would come in and he would just be in the back and he would kind of like, watch and listen. And I thought that was super cool, right? And so for a long time, I had been battling with like not feeling fulfilled as an accountant. And I think that particular partner or founder, was two founders of the company, could tell, right? Because I was hosting the events. And I like to say he's like had something to do with how I exited that company. My old boss, who I had been with for like 6 years, he left and everyone was leaving that I came because I was an early employee. So like the company was growing, changing, got more funding. The dynamics inside the company was changing, as like most startups do. And I just wasn't happy, right? And so I wasn't going to quit because I'm not a psycho and I needed to take care of my kids.
Money is a
Oh,
real thing.
right. I needed
Yeah.
money.
Kids
Um,
eat food.
right. Krystin live her own life outside of kids, takes
Yes.
money,
Yes.
travel. I've always been a traveler, right? And so kind of CoTripper started under, as a small group travel company before the pandemic. So was separated from that company and they gave me a severance, right? And typically when you get, it was a layoff technically, right? And so typically when you get a layoff, you don't get a severance or you're laid off, right? So some people do, depends. But I like to think that he had something to do with it from watching me move and doing the things that I was doing. And I was like, this is my opportunity. I have this lump sum of money that I can really try to pursue something. So I took that year and took the best parts of my life and the hardest parts of my life and built CoTripper. So it was like the best parts of my life were these trips we were taking. And I was like, whatever, I'm not giving up travel. I don't care if I have a newborn. I mean, we were gone. We're just doing stuff, going. The idea was born to do small group travel for single moms. And that's what we launched as a group travel company for single moms in 2019. So that was like a year after I had separated. I figured out what I wanted to do. And I really, really wanted to support single parents, single moms specifically. And so I started Single Moms Travel actually before CoTripper as just like an exploratory thing, kind of how this podcast came about for you, right? It was like, I just want to know how other single moms are traveling. Like, what are the recommendations? Like, what's really hard about it? What do they find easy about it? And so that's how that community started on Instagram. And then the pandemic happened. I took like some of the early adopters who were like very active in our community and put them in a WhatsApp, and they just poured out. Oh my God, hundreds and hundreds of
Wow.
messages in this WhatsApp group from everything across the board, from dating to like buying a house to like just maintaining their sanity, like so many different things. And I was like, there's something here that's way beyond travel that I need to figure out how to build for the single mom community at large. It took me a long time to like put down travel as our business, though, a lot, probably longer than it should have, because I was so connected to the benefits of travel and the thought that like if you did a really hard thing, the things that were like not as hard would become easier, right? And I feel like travel is a really
100%.
hard thing to do financially, time wise, experience wise, facing your fears a little bit, and things like that. So eventually that blossomed into what I'm calling we're a media company now, right? So travel is one of our verticals, home life is one of our verticals, finance is one of our verticals. I took all of the top of mind things that I was hearing throughout the pandemic, and I made it into a business model. And I think media is like the vehicle in which we receive information now, right? And I think you and I both experienced the lack of information or resources for single moms, no matter what your entry point into the community is. And so I thought, like, why not aggregate all of these archetypes, all of these avatars that are single moms, give them a place to go, give them content that if you're a single mom by choice, if you're a widow, if you've never been married, that you can find content and community that resonates with you. I just didn't see that online. I still don't see that online except with what I'm doing and like pockets of where there's a podcast, like, this
Yes.
one. And I think there's something really special, like you said, every day this community is growing. I think there's something really special at being on the emergence
Yeah.
of the economic impact and just ownership of single motherhood. I think it's going to be a huge thing. And I think because media will help us pay attention to it, it'll give us a place to go for it. I think a lot of people will start investing. And that's my dream, right? That more investments are made in single moms for the things that are hard or the things that are confusing or the things that, you just want to talk to other people about, like that exists in this community that can help you, like not
Yeah.
in a struggling type of way, but just like in a thriving type of way. Like I want to thrive. I want you to thrive, all single moms to thrive. Like how can we help or support or encourage that mindset? Because I think some people don't have it from the sheer lack of acknowledgement of the
Yeah.
community.
There
Yeah.
is, I mean, there really is so little out there. I remember doing a Google search, like the most basic, maybe Amazon book search when I started thinking about becoming a single mom. And I was like, there's got to be some books.
Right.
There's not. Um, and I've now found like a few, but I'm still shocked at how little there is. And for me, like my daughter's two, I don't always need a single mom perspective. Sometimes I need a mom perspective. More often than not, I just need a parent perspective that aligns with the way that I parent, right? But sometimes I really do need a single parent perspective. And those times are a lot of the things that you cover on the CoTripper site, which is like, I was looking through this morning and it's like, okay, what are the 5 things you should take traveling? Like, what are the tools? What are the hacks? How does it work with just 2 arms to take 2 kids
Right.
through security? What should you always have in your luggage? There are things that are different about, especially experiencing travel, I think, for single parents, right? And so I think that this content is really valuable because I'm looking for something like so specific when I go online that I'm either going to get it from the women that I've interviewed for the podcast or now in your community, right? Because I can put something really, really specific in, like, talk me through this one thing.
Yeah.
And I know that there's all these other women that have gone through that moment. And so I think that's really valuable. And I'm really excited to now be a part of the CoTripper community and start kind of engaging and asking questions. And especially as I turn the corner to like really some bigger travel, I've already found your content really helpful. And so I'm with you. I'm excited to see how this all grows. And it does feel like it's also just way too late. Like, why has it taken this long? But I even feel like I started trying to get pregnant 4 years ago. And I feel like even in the 2 years that I was trying, and especially in the last 2 years, there's just way more conversation around it. And
Yeah.
people understand the terminology a little bit more. And so I like that energy, but I still feel like it's shocking to me the numbers of women that are single moms versus the amount of kind of content brands support,
Mhm.
research that's there. It's just kind of shocking.
Yeah, and we're a relatively small community, to be quite honest, because we were talking before we recorded. It's really hard to find community. Like
Yeah,
I have to search hashtags. Like again, I think that's that whole identifying with single moms and like how many people are doing it versus how many people are not doing it. It's been as a company, rooted in like one, driving community, and two, delivering content that's relevant and timely and like what you want. It's important for me to hear and like just research people, but it's so hard. Like it's been so
so
hard.
hard. Yeah, we don't have a ton of free time, us
Yeah.
working single mamas. There's not a ton of free time, it turns out.
Yeah. What I would encourage you if you're like a single mom listening to this podcast, like tag, if you're on Instagram, like just tag single mom, tag single mom, something, because that is how like brands and businesses, we have to figure out a way, especially for a like kind of an underserved demographic. I feel like we are certainly an underserved demographic. Like we would have to try to figure out like how do we aggregate the community. And so that's literally how I find people. It's how like so like just that, even that ownership on the content you are putting out helps us help the community, right? It helps us figure out like who are you, like what do you like, and be able to do that research around the community at large. Because I spend hours just trying to find single moms. Like I'm just
It's
trying.
crazy. It's
Yeah, I
crazy. I
know
feel the
you're
same
there.
way about the podcast. It's like I know there's a ton of people out there because I'm getting all that feedback that folks I know or person connected to person is sending the podcast to people. I see the metrics of who's listening, But trying to just schedule a sit down for an hour in a quiet place, that's the funny part. That's impossible. Is impossible. And I do find it funny, but then when we make it work, it's so valuable.
Yeah.
Like these conversations are so valuable. And I continue to hear, which I'm sure you hear about your content, that it's really helpful for folks to hear other experiences and get those travel hacks. And I now have a bunch of people listening who aren't even single parents who are like, oh my God, the tips you just gave about kids getting sick in the first year was super helpful to me. So it's like that content is valuable, I think, even outside the community. But I'm totally with you. I think this is just the beginning of what
Yeah.
it will be. So you got in early and you created
I'm,
an
I'm happy.
incredible community. So I'm excited to watch it grow. Okay, I want to talk about travel for a second. So I love to travel like you. I traveled a ton before having kids. I was nervous that after I had a child, I wouldn't be able to travel in the same way. And again, society tells you, like, oh, traveling with kids is so hard and blah, blah. I have traveled with my child. I've traveled without my child, and it has not been as hard as I thought that it would be. I also find it incredibly empowering, like you said earlier. When you do have a really rough day, you're like, man, I did that. Like the little thing that happens to me next week is no big deal because I got through 6 hours on the tarmac with a sick kid. Like, I got this, you know? When did you start traveling with your kids? Like, when did you really start to kind of bring them into that part of your life?
Mhm.
And how often are you guys kind of getting out domestically, internationally these days?
Yeah. So I think with my son, his dad's side, I mean, there were just like a ton of weddings and a ton of like that's how it started. It was like, well, we gotta go.
Family
You know,
events. Yeah.
so and because I was such like comfortable travel, I mean, I did a lot of international travel. I used to be what they now call an influencer. In my day, it was blogger,
Yeah.
you know. And so, I had done like Europe and a lot of Europe and the Caribbean, and I enjoyed those places so much and wanted to do more. And so when I had kids, just those domestic early kind of like weddings and things like that, it helped me. It was like, oh, okay. So I was never really scared to travel with him because we had traveled so much. I think I just continued on when I wasn't partnered. And because I had the experience from when I was partnered, I would say like you have to just do it. It's scary, it's hard, it's unpredictable, but you have to do it. Like if it's something that you want to do. And I encourage moms to do it. I think when I had my daughter, she traveled, I think her first international flight was when she was under 2 and we went to Paris and it was smooth. I mean, I met my sisters there, but we traveled alone. And it's just little things about doing research, like, going to the gate, asking for a bassinet seat, asking for like, hey, is there somebody next to me? Is the flight full? Like those little just you got to ask these questions, and go to the
Yeah.
gate and see what you can get that doesn't add any additional costs. So
Yeah.
with her, it was like I was a little bit more like, okay, I have to make sure like I do research or I figure out what do I need because I hadn't had experience. He was 8 at the time, like when we separated. So I didn't have like solo experience traveling with a younger child, but I did have some experience, right, with being
Yeah.
partnered. So I think it never was a time where I was like, I never traveled, So for me, it was helpful that I was already an experienced traveler on my own. But I
Yeah.
would say for people who aren't, I mean, honestly, now there are other group trip resources. There are other things that you can tap into that lifts the burden of you traveling totally by yourself, which is great. Like there are products that exist for family travel that, I mean, there's some with age requirements like 5. So that doesn't help if you have like kids under 5. I mean, there's no magic formula that I really could tell you other than like I strongly encourage you to do it and just get in community with women who have done it.
Yeah.
Ask all the questions.
All the questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And just
travel day. You nailed it. It's travel day logistics. My best friend, who's been on the podcast a few times, has 4 children. She travels all the time with them solo. And she gave me all these tips of like, hey, they're going to ask you to do this in security. You don't have to do it. You can always go through with milk. Like the things that you would stress about, knowing what you can and can't do, knowing about that bassinet, knowing to go, I board last, like little things like that, where it's like, ooh, here are the tricks of the trade that are going to make this day that generally is probably just going to suck. It's not even that fun without kids.
right.
Traveling without kids now is like kind of a luxurious day. But with that said, being in an airport terminal just like isn't fun, right? So getting through that day that's just not really going to be fun and getting to the destination just it just gets you through and it eases that. And I wonder for you, your kids are older now, but when they were younger, what I hear from you and I hear from other moms is like, yeah, getting there might be tough. And yes, there's going to be some moments maybe when you are traveling that are going to be challenging, but the growth you see in your kids when they're
Yeah.
seeing new things and eating new things and engaging with a world they haven't seen before is worth all of that.
Yeah.
Is that what you've seen in your kids too?
100%. My kids like ask me, when are we going somewhere? Like they are
Oh,
so,
I
and
love that.
they fall in line. I think that my tip would be the younger you, the better. The younger that you can get them experience, the better. Because my kids they're great. They're
Yeah,
great
now they're
travelers.
probably pros.
I mean, they're not, they know what to do. They have their system. They like, got my headphones, got my tablet, got whatever. Like,
Yeah.
I was like fearful, like with the ear popping thing. One time my son's ears popped and it was this whole thing. And, just knowing like have the earplugs, have the juice, have something,
Yeah.
stick on your boob if they're a baby when you're taking off.
Yeah.
So like, it's just like they've grown to be so used to the experience that it's almost like, I mean, they're privileged in a way, like it's not even like it's special to them. It's like in their routine. So I
Yeah.
just recommend the earlier the better. And like even this last trip we had to Morocco, like they had to get like the typhoid vaccine. And I'm like, I don't need it. I won't take it. As long as they have it, I'm good. And then I get sick, during
Oh, yeah.
and it was like, thank God it was a 24-hour bug. But like one of my biggest fears that I had not happened yet was like, what happens if I get sick? So I always have travel insurance. I
Yeah.
don't care what anyone else says, like, I'm getting travel insurance because anything can happen. But like having that experience just as a parent was like, oh, whew, now I know what it's like to be sick and like have.
Yeah, right?
And so it just like you said, even not even for the kids, even for me, like it teaches me how to be calm or like how to like different areas or like how to relax and just be present in the moment and not be on alert all the time. Like I've grown to be much more comfortable traveling places I've never been, because we've traveled so much together and I know we have this way that we move. It's helped me relax and us by in turn we get to explore more because I'm less paranoid or whatever, still cautious and still, put certain safety things in place. But like as a family, I think as a single mom, like there are just so many benefits to travel beyond the travel experience that you just have to do it and you have to try it, at least try it, and just accept the fact that there will be unexpected things, right? Like
Yeah.
nature of the
Just
beast.
yeah. You brought up a really good point, which is I think so much of my experience, which has been like instead of being afraid of the thing happening, the sleepless night when they're a baby, afraid of like the day that they have a stomach bug and you're on a plane, right? Like those moments that everyone tells you are going to happen, they're going to happen. You're going to have a delayed flight. You're going to have some major travel snafu. Like it's going to happen. So instead of being scared of it, you're going to get through it. And it is a little bit of like as you said, it does make all the little things way easier. I find that I'm 10 times calmer as a parent than I was before being a parent, which is not something society told me I would be. So I'm totally there with you on that, which is like take them a little bit as like little empowerment steps of like, oh, we did that as a family. Like we figured that thing out. We're not going to have to worry about that again, right? We checked that box. Where have you guys gone? Tell me a little bit about some of the trips you guys have taken and your favorite spots.
Honestly, the biggest trip that we've taken together recently is Morocco. And I had just heard like the wonderful things. I'd never been to Africa. So typically I would take them somewhere that I've already been. Just as a comfort
Got
thing.
it.
I'm like, okay, I've
Got
been
it.
there. I'm, like Europe. I'm familiar with Europe. Like I've
Yeah,
been
yeah.
like all over there. So it's like when I took my daughter to Paris, it was like,
I got this.
been here
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
five
yeah.
times, you know? So we were on the train and just certain things like bringing an umbrella stroller. Mistake I made is bringing like my nice big lovely stroller that could not get in and out of the metros. Like literally we had
Oh,
to take it
yeah.
apart to get in and out of the metro. So you just learn little things, but like so that was great. And like my daughters, when we went to Paris, it was just her and me. My son didn't go on that trip. And it was just like the little things like that. It was wonderful to like learn like, oh, how to move about. It was like really interesting and just fun seeing her. She's like chasing pigeons in front of the Louvre, you know, like it's just like she doesn't even
Oh,
know. Like it's just so amazing to see like you're so outside of your norm and they just acclimate. So that was like really cool to see. But like our trip to Morocco was like in that I got sick, we recovered, we did like like we had slots for everybody to do what they were passionate about. And with older kids, that's really it's really cool to watch, right?
yeah,
Like
you
so
kind of get your time and things you're excited about, and everyone goes with you. That's cool.
yeah, and the people there are just amazing and warm. I think there are some places that I've been. I mean, Europe has been like not so good with people before, depends on the day. But just everyone that I met there, down to the guy, we had a 10-hour drive to the Sahara. I thought that that was going to be really bad. It was so smooth. The kids were so we like the way it stopped and started like to get us there, and we had like one overnight stay at this really cool like castle thing. I don't know.
Ooh.
It was just beautiful. And just it was also because I did a lot of research though. Like I found the place, I found the things, and that's hard to find traveling too. Like the
Yeah.
places that maybe are recommended for someone, a woman traveling solo with kids to go. Like
Yeah.
that's not easy information to find online. Our best trip, I think, for me, they will all probably tell you something different, was Morocco. It was just like I overcame the fear of getting sick. Everybody had their time. They were older, you know, like it was just a different experience. They could give me more feedback around like the experience.
Yeah.
I loved it. But I mean, we haven't done crazy, like too many crazy international trips. We had a really great time in LA, like Catalina Island, like something just not that fancy, you know, but the Caribbean, my daughter's favorite place is Jamaica. I can tell you that. Like she loves Jamaica. She got in the water in LA and was like, this isn't Jamaica. So it's ice cold. I'm gonna get out.
Exactly. That's fair.
But yeah, like honestly, we haven't traveled a lot because I've been so focused on like building CoTripper and really
Yeah.
just like, you know, sacrificing our own stuff for the greater good of building this
Yeah.
company. But I'm looking forward. We're planning our first community trip for our.
That was just what I was going to ask. I'm like dying for a trip like this. Tell me what is happening. I've seen posts on single moms travel. Like, tell
Yes.
me everything about these single mom trips because I'm in.
So unfortunately, we never have executed a trip due to COVID, right? And so when I changed the business model, I was debating on like, should I still offer group trips? Like, is that something? Because it was just so hard after COVID to like get all the things in place. And so this year, I just finally decided like we're gonna do it. We're gonna go. And so right now, I'm just collecting like interest forms, and I've learned a lot about the way I've offered trips in the past and what worked and what didn't work, and you know the preferences of single moms that maybe I don't consider as a single mom. So kind of getting this formula, so to speak, of like how to execute these things. And so now we're probably going to do 2 trips next year, one for smaller kids, you know, maybe like 5 and under, and then one for the older kids. Still debating on location, but we have an app. And I think the best way to do it based on how we've done it before is to bring all the moms interested into our app and really have them be a part of how we create trips.
That's so
It'll
cool.
yeah, it'll help me make sure the experience is amazing for the people who are coming instead of me trying to like pre-build an itinerary, which I've done in the past, which they liked, but it
Yeah.
was a lot. It was a lot
Yeah.
of red tape. So that's the way we're doing it now. So we have an interest form around the fall. We're going to segment the groups and say like, hey, here are the 2 groups that we're thinking, but have everybody in a collective private group in our app, and we're going to book a trips for
Oh my
2025.
God.
That's pretty much the gist of it. It's not that formal. It's just like we're going, guys. We're doing it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to add myself to that list right after our chat. I want to know about that. I love that idea. I think you've got something there. I really do. I think there's this fear around travel as a single mom. And I think providing that kind of community and knowing that you're going to go and have other people there with you, folks who've had kind of similar types of experience. There's going to be other kids there. The trip is going to be structured in a way that supports all those elements, I think is genius because it's hard to do that all on your own. And
Yeah.
for me, what I've thought a lot about in terms of travel is like, I'm not at the stage because my child is 2 that I want to travel just with her internationally. It doesn't feel like she's quite old enough to, like, as you said, give me feedback and have that engagement. Like, we're just getting to the place where she can like talk to me at dinner time. Like, we're just turning that corner, you know? But I do love the idea of going with people who are open to going with me and a child, or bringing, we've got some amazing babysitters that are like a part of our life that I would love to travel with, to get her started early. But the big thing for me that you're addressing is that community piece.
Yeah.
It's like there's already people there that you know that like you're going to hit it off with a couple of them, right? And I love connecting with people, and so for me that adds that component that just planning travel on your own wouldn't have. So I think you've got something there, and I've got to put myself on all the lists to be kept in the loop on it. Kristen,
Yeah.
tell me this. I feel like this is kind of the magic question of parenting and single parenting. You, like me, have a lot of plates spinning. Um, Entrepreneurship, running the CoTripper community, being a mom, also having, I'm assuming, a personal life and friends and activities that you do without the kids. Um, how's the balance feeling for you right now at this stage? And what do you do to stay, sane and authentic, and what are the tools that you're pulling from?
Yeah. Organization is something that I've historically been terrible at, right? And so lately I have put a conscious effort into like kind of time blocking and just like almost forecasting my years, and what I want for me out of that year. It's like a life plan,
Yeah.
I would say. And it's a tool I use because I visit it daily. It's like what do I need? And I check in with myself pretty regularly, almost daily. Like, what do I need? I also, and this might skew towards older kids, I also really communicate to my kids that I'm their mom, but I'm me first. And I
Mm.
really honor that. And I require them to honor that now that they're at an age where they can. It was more challenging for me. Hold on, babe. It was more challenging for me when they were younger and I couldn't necessarily set those boundaries. Um, but that's really important to me that my kids know that I'm their mom, but I'm a human being first, just like they're kids, but they are human beings first. And like the things that they need and the things that I need have to work harmoniously together. And so that is a intentional conversation that I've had with my kids since they were young, even when they probably didn't understand it. But that has, I think, benefited me now where they know when like I need a minute or I'm
Yeah.
working or we have to do this for your brother and you have to allow us that time to do it. Or I'm going out because I need to go out with my girlfriends. And so I just try to really parent intentionally and not neglect myself, which is very easy to do. Single parenting, bless you. Um, so I mean, that's what I would say. I think entrepreneurship has been in any single mom or single parent pursuing entrepreneurship, it's been tough. There have been times where financially it's tough and it's a choice I continue to make because I really believe in what I'm building, and who I'm building it for. So um, it's about recognizing when you need to ask for help around those things, and that's something you have to do. And
Yeah.
it's not a sign of weakness. I always say asking for help is a sign of strength and self-awareness that you're not able to do things, everything on your own, which we're not as humans built to do that. Um, so I think that's how I manage. I'm a woman of faith, so I'm very listen. It's nothing that I can't do. Being a woman of faith, I believe that. There's no obstacle too hard. It's just about in the moment knowing what do I need to delegate and what do I need to do myself, or what boundary do I need to set, or what I need to do to ask for help. That's just I'm in a constant analysis of those things. What do I need to do for myself? What do I need to delegate? What do I need to do to ask for help to manage all of these things that I have going on that I feel strongly that I need to do? And it's about also like stop doing things that are not valuable to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that don't meet your next milestone or your next goal for yourself, for your life, your family. Like you have to stop doing those things too. And that was hard for me because sometimes that meant like I lost friends or I lost environments that no longer served me that I was still emotionally connected to. But it's just like a constant analysis of my life, my goals, and where I want to be, and just diligently working towards those things, right?
Yeah.
and screaming and crying and doing whatever else you need to do to get
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
Pilates, whatever it is.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Sleep. You nailed it in my experience as well, Kristen, which is it's daily and it
Mhm.
shifts daily. It's like, gosh, I didn't get as much sleep last night as I thought I would because my daughter got up early. So like I'm gonna shift what I thought we were gonna do today because we need something else. Or I made that plan. That plan doesn't feel really good to me anymore. We're gonna shift to something else. Um, but it's daily. It's like I send out the little sonar like throughout the day, right? Of like, ooh, how are we doing? What do we need to feel good? What do we need to feel connected? What do I need as a human? And I love, love, love that you said that it's like you are teaching your kids that you're you and you're their mom and you have to take care of you to be a good mom. And
Right.
so regulating yourself is your way of being a great parent. And I think that's just like such an amazing lesson and one that I'm certainly going to think about with my daughter for sure. I loved chatting. I'm so impressed by everything that you're building. I think it's incredible. Will you tell those listening again where they can find you and your companies?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much across social at Krystin Hargrove. CoTripper is at CoTripper. Our website is www.cotripper.co, not com. That's very important. And then we also have a Single Moms Travel, which is just on Instagram, where we primarily talk about travel and do all the travel things. So you can find us at any one of those places. And I'm an open book. You can ping me whenever. Like if I can help, I definitely will.
Awesome. Thank you so much for chatting. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope we can talk more. And if there's anything I can do to support the community, please let me know. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. For more information about the podcast or me, go to youandmekidpod.com. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you or your company are looking to jump into the podcast world, now is the time. The Plug Agency is here to connect you to the full power of podcasting. You just record and leave the rest to us. The people are listening and want to hear from you. Theplug-agency.com. That's theplug-agency.com. Click the link in the episode description for an exclusive offer.